Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with Stefaan van Hooydonk, who is the ex-CLO and corporate university head for Cognizant, Flipkart, Philips, Nokia, and AGFA. He is the founder of the Curiosity Institute, and as you can imagine, that made me extremely curious to have him on the show. So welcome, Stefaan.
Thank you so much, Diane. It's an honor to be with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you on the show. I was looking at your CV, I was like, scrolling. I mean, you did so many things. It's amazing, your accomplishments. And I know you've recently left Cognizant, but you're doing so many interesting things. And I thought, I really want to get into what made you interested in finding, the Curiosity Institute and some of that. But let's get a little background on you. I mentioned a lot of companies for which, you've led and done certain things, but can you fill in the blanks a little bit?
I'm a Belgian citizen. I was born and raised in Belgium. And then I spent my life after university, even during university, I started traveling. Spent time in China, 13 years China, spent time in Finland, spent time in France, spent time in Saudi Arabia, spent time in India, spent time in London now. And I've been really blessed with many things. Blessed with 4 children, blessed with a wonderful partner, blessed with many different opportunities I had, many different industries, many different companies, blessed with good health. I guess blessed with also a natural curiosity, which you also have clearly, and a never-ending urge and desire to learn and to grow. And there's so much knowledge out there. And I feel a little bit embarrassed that even being a learning leader for big companies, I was never learning as much as I could have until only the last 5 years or so. And I realized maybe because the clock is ticking, I'm 52 now, or something. But I said, boy, I need to reconnect with all that wisdom. There's so much beautiful stuff out there to learn, to read, to connect. There's so many beautiful people, and that's what I'm trying to do now.
Well, that's awesome. I'm with you on the learning aspect. I think, it's really interesting that I ended up with so much education because I really didn't like going to school, but I liked learning, and I think that's what attracted me to online education, because I love the fact that you can learn so much, but you don't have to sit through these lectures necessarily. And there's so much that we can get from what's out there, but it can be overwhelming, just the amount of things you can learn. You can get on one of these, sites and just go down a rabbit hole and never get But you went from education to corporate, and you had like all these different changes. I guess I'm curious on being a CLO for one thing. What exactly do you do as a CLO, and how did you get that level? What do you have to do to get to that level, and what do you do when you get there?
A good question. A chief learning officer is a CLO is a chief learning officer, so right. Responsible for and different companies give it different definitions. But I've always looked at it as I'm a business guy sitting in a learning jacket trying to solve things for an organization from a perspective of knowledge and learning. And for me, learning is not only about classes, it's about knowledge. Because often I'm asking a really stupid question to people, like how many classes did you go to in the last 3 months? I ask people.
Yeah.
And if I ask you that question, maybe yourself, you could think a little bit about it. Oh, I've been to this webinar, I've been to this. But very often people would have a limited amount of activity. And then I asked people, how often did you went to Google in just the last 3 days? And people start smiling, like what you're doing is you can't, because that's exactly how people learn nowadays. So as a chief learning officer, it's about how do you find in 2020 the best the best, the more efficient, the more effective way for people to grow and learn. And very often it's by getting out of the way and just focusing on culture and climate in your organization,
Right.
and allowing people to drive things. I think curiosity is really at the centerpiece of that as well. Because I'm often telling people, like when I was at Cognizant, if everybody's naturally curious, you don't need me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. But, well, people have their curiosity impacted, though. That's the problem, right?
What do you mean by curiosity impacted?
If, we start off being very curious when we're young, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as you get older, it peaks around age 5, and then it declines drastically as we go through our education system, as we go through different things in life. And I think that was what really drew me to studying curiosity. Yeah. You talk to some people who are super curious still, and then other people maybe not so much. So you can try and hire for curiosity, but if you don't promote a learning culture and reward people if they feel intimidated, if there's all these other factors, then they need you as a chief learning officer.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's a very good point. It's maybe why I alluded to the notion of culture and climate.
Yeah.
Because very often companies are saying, "Oh, we need people to be self-starters. We need people to be self-motivating." And now, especially now with COVID and work from home and type of thing. Right. But then suddenly there's all these expectations that everybody will naturally just do it. And I think that's a flawed notion, because all our times through school, as you just mentioned, were not about creating curiosity, were about finding either hating it or by going to tests, or we were not really educated. And also our professional environment, which I think is very much still driven by Taylorist thinking. And I remember Frederick Taylor, beginning of the 20th century, with scientific management, I think the biggest thinker in the 20th century, but he's almost outlived his role in the new environment. It's not anymore about the differential between managers and non-managers. It's not that a manager is somebody who knows and a non-manager is somebody who doesn't know and is just there to do things. Nowadays, with VUCA and volatile environments, everybody has a piece of knowledge. Right. And the better you can tap into everybody's ideas and everybody's curiosity, for that matter, the better you're going to be successful as a company. So it's all about changing the culture, changing the environment of things. So you're right. There is still a value of learning, but it's not anymore. The value is not about like 20 years ago. The chief learning officer or the training department, or whatever we call it, would be the organization that would take care of classes. Right. Nowadays, it's about learning to consider learning as a supply chain. How do you make sure that learning flows really easily through an organization, but not only the organization itself, but also with suppliers and customers? How do you make sure that flows really well together? And there's a lot of the beauty nowadays with technology. There's so many things that can actually enable that.
It's really
and if you then
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but and you said suppliers and customers. I'd like to just expand on that before we go some other direction, because how are you helping in that respect, and how did you?
Different companies have different goals and different desires and different relationship with customers. But at Cognizant, I was really happy to share our learning philosophy with customers, because they often said, "You're a company of 300,000 people and you've got really smart people, you must be doing something right. Please tell us and how you set up learning, how you democratize learning, how you create this culture of curiosity, how do you focus not only on learning as a model of consumption, but also as a model of contribution." Because I often said that I have 300,000 trainers, because everybody has something great to share with at least one other person, and very likely more than one other persons. How do you create an environment and an ecosystem to really tap into those people? companies are so good at looking to the external world for specialists. There's so many beautiful resources in your organizations that people often forget about it, and they might be pigeonholed somewhere in a certain role, but they might have special things to share. And very often, the sad thing is, very often companies don't even know they have that wealth of information inside the organization. Because,
yeah, that's true.
And that's also where technology can really help. And we're also empowering people to share their knowledge can help.
How did you use technology to broaden curiosity and share knowledge at Cognizant or now? I mean, I'm curious.
Well, now it's a beautiful startup. I'd love to share with you what's
what are you
happening
doing now? Yeah.
It's lovely. Let's focus on Cognizant for a second. And, what I mentioned earlier is I've been really excited and intrigued by the notion of curiosity. And strangely, in the last couple of weeks, the more I read about it, the less I understand, because there's so much. Like curiosity is a little bit like what innovation was 50 years ago. You've got anthropologists and behavioral scientists and neuroscientists, and all they have a piece of the pie, but there's not really an integrated view on things. And it's up to the listener to really to make sense out of it. But I think it has the opportunity now to consolidate and get closer. But back to Cognizant, I think I really got excited about the notion of tertiary skills. Because very often as a learning organization, you focus on primary skills, which are the skills that you need in front of your customer. If you're a sales guy, you need product knowledge, and you need sales skills. Or if you're an HR person, you need to know that. And you go, and then secondary skills are typically about behaviors. I need to be good at collaboration and soft skills and type of thing. But tertiary skills is all about mindset and habits. And that links very closely to culture and how do we behave things. But learning folks and actually organizations have been shying away from this, because how on earth do I teach somebody to have a growth mindset?
For a lot of them, right? You got to wrap your mind around that.
and we're not. Yes, we're not used to that, because we've been very transactional. We need somebody's we have the open the skull philosophy. You open the skull, you pour in some knowledge, and you hope it doesn't come out of their ears.
Yeah.
And that's actually with mindset. That's not how things work. There's very different ways of we indeed the neuroscience and neuro-linguistic programming and other sciences or pseudosciences have taught us there's different approaches. So in any case, I was really excited about the notion of I want to step out of the way. I want to create a culture where everybody's naturally an A player, somebody's naturally curious, who's reading all the time. What do I need to do then? So you need to focus both on the individuals, but you also have to work on the organization. In terms of working on the individuals, it's not that hard. It's give people language. And with language, I mean, give people words, give people paradigms to think about, to reflect upon. If you've never heard growth and mindset in one single combination of words, you're not going to check with yourself, am I a growth mindset in my family life, with my partner, or maybe I'm with my peers, I'm fixed, with my boss, I'm such and such. So once you give those concepts to people, people have the opportunity to reflect. And once you have the opportunity to reflect, you have an opportunity to decide for yourself, do I want to do something about it? Yes or no?
Right.
Like your curiosity index assessment also it's a beautiful document, and people get that feedback, and suddenly you either do something with it or you don't do something with it. But at least you have that opportunity to reflect. How am I doing on the fear component, on the technology, on the other components, and that's the same with teaching. Or teaching, it might be the wrong words, but by sharing those concepts with people. And we've trained about 15,000 people at Cognizant on the notion of curiosity and growth mindset and having the right learning strategies to deal with complex environments. And
is
we
that
did
based
surveys.
on UX work, or is that, do you go into that, the open versus, fixed mindset, or what are you teaching them? You say you help them. What does that look like? I guess I'm trying to.
Yeah, we are teaching the concept of curiosity. We're also teaching them about some of the core behaviors, and I think growth mindset, fixed mindset is a very important one. I also have a notion. Curiosity for me is curiosity about, first of all, the world, and how am I looking at the world? How am I, for instance, with COVID, am I interested in what COVID is all about? Am I interested in the politics in my country? Am I interested? Do I have do I read books, type of thing? All these type of things. So curiosity about the world is important. Another dimension for me is curiosity about others. You could call that social curiosity. How much am I interested in others? Because I'm a great believer that none of us are working at 100% of our natural capabilities. And we need others to lift them. Because now I'm learning from you, and I hope you're learning a little bit from me, and that already is an uplifting in a moment, you know. But with other people, trust is really important. Because you can learn best from people you trust really well, and because if we trust each other really well, you could touch me on the shoulder and say, Stefan, maybe you didn't do that in the right way. And because you trust me, you're not going to be offended by me saying so. So suddenly you can lift me at a higher level. And I think it's really important. And there's other dimensions of social curiosity. But the third one, also very important, I think, is curiosity about myself. And that links to self-awareness. Do I know about my values? Do I know about my purpose? Do I know about my backbone? Do I know about my limiting beliefs and my assumptions, which you test in your survey? So really important. And we teach those things in our classes in really short sessions, 45 minutes type of sessions. And just feeding people those concepts. And we did surveys afterwards, like 3 months afterwards, checking with people how much did resonate and how much did it make you change. And actually 52% of the people, they said, something changed for me because I'm starting to look at the world in a different way.
That's awesome.
You can't win them all. But at least those 52 people, 52% of the people, they said, yes, this really is crucial for me. And we also saw, when we did an analysis of a traditional analysis of learning hours, so how much learning hours did people consume the year before they took those sessions and the year after, they jumped from 25 hours to 42 hours.
Wow, that's impressive.
You know, just by having that little input, maybe it's okay to learn about the world. Maybe it's okay to democratize things.
No idea.
And then, of course, in parallel, we created portals where it was easy for people to access that stuff. We invited role models to share things. We focused heavily on resources. It's like with the Google example I used earlier. It's not about going to a class. It's about accessing the right information at the right time. It's about allowing people books. An interesting piece we found also is the shadow of a manager. The more a manager learns, the more the team will learn. And the inverse is also true. If the manager doesn't learn, the team will also not learn as much. Of course, you always have A players in a team. They don't need a manager to be influenced by their learning style. But people follow the shadow of a manager. And I think that was a big awakening for me.
Well, cultural stuff definitely flows down from the top in the company. And, I think that a lot of the companies where I see, I work with Novartis, Verizon, these companies that have this embraced culture of curiosity, they embrace what they want to see in their people. And if you don't do that, you're going to have employees that don't care. And you can't really just ask people to read more. They have to kind of know why, what's in it for them. And I'm curious if at Cognizant you did any training or research or anything to look at how curiosity improved engagement, innovation, motivation, any of the things that, I often give the analogy of curiosity like this. You're trying to bake a cake. Let's say you're baking a cake and that's your end product, okay? And you have these ingredients of flour and eggs and oil or whatever. You're mixing it together. You put it in the pan. You put it in the oven. You hope to get cake, right? But if you don't turn on the oven, you don't get cake. So in the workplace, instead of cake, we have productivity money is your end product, is your cake. Yeah. And you have these ingredients of engagement, innovation, and all these motivation, all these things, soft skills, and everything you're trying to leadership mixed together. But nobody's turning on the oven, which is curiosity, which is the spark to all these things, right? So how are you measuring the success you're getting with these ingredients actually turning into cake?
It's a beautiful question. I think I only have the beginning of an answer.
Okay. I know it's a tough question for a lot of companies.
Because also I just left, and so a number of some of the number crunching will be within Cognizant now. Mm-hmm. But my analytics team at the time, we found that the more people learn, and you could see learning a little bit as a surrogate for curiosity, because we had all kind of different tools for people to learn and access to the website and things like that. Right. So the more people learn, the more they stay back. So there was a positive correlation or an inverse correlation between attrition and learning. So
huge cost saving. Yeah.
And that's a huge cost saving indeed. Right. So the more you invest in skilling, the more it will pay back for itself. And our CEO saw that immediately, and he said, "Why do we double your budget? Just tell me what you need even more." So we had a huge believer. But I think it's also important for the learning environment to have those analytics and to drive those results, and to your point, really to be constantly doing research and seeing what curiosity does work. So it was, I did the research on learning. I didn't do the research on curiosity. Mm-hmm. But I think it's close.
Very close. Now you have the Curiosity Institute that you founded. Now, what is that part of? Is that something that you did separate, or is it part of Cognizant? It's outside of Cognizant?
Separate. Okay. I left.
That's something you're doing now, right?
Yes. Okay. I just started with that because I got so intrigued by curiosity. And by the notion, I said, okay, I would like to set up an environment for individuals, for organizations to do more with that curiosity. I think initially I'll be starting on the corporate side, but at the end of the day, curiosity is all pervasive in societies, in schools, with kids. So I'm really hopeful that after the initial launch, we can also start putting our ideas towards how do we make this part of society? Because I think nowadays with technology and with algorithms on Facebooks and all the other tools of this world, they're pushing us so much in a certain direction, and serendipity is out of the window, and a number of downsides of these algorithms are actually going against the notion of curiosity, and they're making us less curious. Because everything is naturally fed to us somehow. You know, curiosity the technology has a beautiful upside, but also has some challenges. So it's just one example how, but curiosity I think is something that we need in this new society.
It's really an important thing. You know, it's interesting because I've been studying this for years, because it took me years of research to come up with the Curiosity Code Index. And I had no intention of coming up with an assessment when I wrote my book, to be honest with you. I was going to write a book on curiosity. And as I started to write the book, because I had written my dissertation on emotional intelligence, and I became certified in emotional intelligence and Myers-Briggs and different personality assessments, I was interested in assessing things. So I went out to look to see what are the different assessments for curiosity. And there's cash-in, and there's openness to experience, and there's different, different assessments, but they all tell you the same thing. Are you curious or not? I'm like, okay, so I'm not. Now what? You know what I mean? If that was the case. Yes. I mean, I am, but if I wasn't, then what do you do, right? So that's why I wanted to figure out what stops us, because if you don't know what's inhibiting you, how do you improve it and move forward? So is that something you work with when you're helping people develop curiosity? Are you focusing on what's stopping them? I mean, what is your focus when they come?
Okay, well, now I'm starting now with companies. So with companies, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to do assessments, I'm going to do training and consulting.
Okay.
And assessment is around individual assessments, but also the organizational component. What is preventing or what is enabling the organization to do with curiosity in their organizations? And then if people want to do trainings or if people want to get more excited about the notion of what to do with it, then we have those opportunities for training. And then if companies want to go even deeper, like we want to go deep dive on certain specific areas, like on the area of innovation, for instance, or the area of diversity, the area of overall readiness, then there's opportunity to work with them yeah, maybe there's opportunity for us to work together on
Sounds like
these
we have a lot in
projects.
common.
I think the challenge I think for the world is that there's too few people focusing on curiosity now. So I think that's a beautiful way for us to all team up and give this gift to the world and make organizations more competitive, more resilient, more.
Well, you know what I think the problem is such a broad word, as you said earlier. And for me, a lot of times they'll ask me how I define curiosity. And of course, it's a desire to learn, explore, and all that kind of thing. But for me, it's getting out of status quo ways of doing things. And I think that's what companies do. You know, I often share thought experiments where people would stand up and sit down whenever the bell rang, just because everybody had done that, you know, and they just followed along with what everybody else is doing. And I think we do that in the business world. We stand up, we sit down, we do whatever it is that we were supposed to do, and we never even question it. We don't think about it. Yeah. And I have so many great company examples of things that were just so out there that people came up with to solve things because they didn't do the same old thing. And I think we're just so programmed to status quo thinking because that's the handbook. Have you read the handbook? Yes, here's the handbook. You know, you're supposed to do exactly what's in it. Now we need rules. We need certain things. We need, you know, a certain amount of guidelines. But I think that there's just so many people out there that hear the word curiosity and they all go, well, didn't curiosity kill the cat? Or they say just the usual things. And I'm like, it's not just about wanting to read about how to snow ski or a different section of the newspaper or how to go to work differently, a different direction. I mean, those things are all great. Try different things, learn different things. But I think people are so locked into their, not just their cubicle or their silo, but their company and just the way things have always been done there, where I have a lot of examples of, you know, like a hospital in London that went to the race car team to find out how they were efficient, or, you know, just completely different industries going outside of anything that's comfortable. And how are we getting people to think that way? And for me, it was, you know, you have to recognize that you're not thinking that way. And I think that a lot of companies haven't really focused on that. And I know, you know, I'm speaking this next week for Novartis because they have Curiosity Month and they do an amazing amount of training. They actually have their employees do little mini TEDx salons and they're the trainers. And I mean, what's the better way of learning something than to teach it, right? Or speak about it. And I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. What kinds of things have you seen that have just been really out there that have shown you that they've developed curiosity in a company, either Cognizant or somebody you've talked to? I mean, do you have any examples?
I think there's a couple of standard examples that the companies that do things really well, the companies that do things really badly. If you're focusing on the not so good examples, would be a Kodak or a Nokia. Companies that were really on the top of their game and suddenly they did something.
They had an opportunity they ignored, right?
They didn't ask enough questions. They didn't ignore, and they maybe were they lacked some humility, and other things that because I think curiosity always starts from a space of wanting to do better. And if you're already out on the top of the mountain, of course, I guess you want to enjoy rather than anything else. I think good examples, I think, is Microsoft. When Satya joined, 2014 or so, he said, okay, from now it's not anymore about know-it-all, it's about learn-it-all. It's okay not to know. And together blending that with a growth mindset was a beautiful way to drive things forward. And I think now the challenge with curiosity is a bit unruly. And if companies that are focusing more on maintenance and on keeping market share and not sticking out their neck too much, then curiosity is something that goes against the grain of doing business.
Yeah.
I think if you're high on R&D, like a Novartis, and they're doing a beautiful job with curiosity,
Right.
if you're high on R&D and high on the innovation side, you're a lot more likely to be more celebrating curiosity.
Yeah.
But now we've seen with COVID, and that anybody needs to stick out their necks and thinking differently.
Foresight is critical.
And
well, it's a really challenging thing because it's just there's so many examples of. I get like a lot of project managers that go, well, I want to you got to get their deliverable on time, and you're worried you're going to get, some everybody's going to give you all these ideas and you're going to get off track, right? What do you tell somebody when they give you that as a problem for them, for allowing people to give them input?
Boy,
that's a tough one, because the thing is, it's kind of like the guys that would say, or the leaders or gals leaders who would say, I don't want to train people and then have them leave because I don't want to lose this, spend all this money and have them go. But would you rather have untrained people stay or the trained people leave? It goes down to that again. You want to have the good ideas staying. You want the trained people staying, and you want to make sure you're investing in that. Otherwise, you've got people who aren't qualified staying, doing the bad things that we don't really want, right? So there's sometimes there's the opportunity cost that's not really focused on sometimes, the lost opportunity of what it would be like if we could get these examples. In project management, sometimes you have to have alternatives. What if you run into this or this roadblock, right? So there's all these groups that I speak to, and I'm sure you speak to a lot of different groups, and they all have kind of unique issues and unique situations, because people are very comfortable doing things in this old, comfortable way. And you mentioned Kodak, and I wrote about Kodak in the book, as I did Blockbuster and some of these others who did the same thing, because this worked. It was great in the past, but what worked in the past doesn't necessarily work in the future.
Yeah.
So how do you know when it's time to cut bait and go to the next thing? And I think Ben & Jerry's is an interesting example in this curiosity to me, because I don't know if that's in where you are, but Ben & Jerry's makes ice cream.
Yeah.
And they had flavors that were great for a while, but maybe aren't successful anymore. So what they decided to do was bury them, basically give them a funeral, and they would put them on their website and say, this flavor was really popular 1989 to 1995, whatever. And so they celebrate this great thing they did, and then they put it to rest, and they don't keep putting their resources towards something that's no longer popular. And I think that we're all these companies need to give certain products or certain ideas the funeral, you know what I mean? Because they were great, and celebrate it. But I think that a lot of people look at that as defeat sometimes, like, well, we failed. But I don't, how do you change that thought process with these C-suite executives?
I think it's very important indeed that it starts at the C-suite. They need to drive this. I think some failures in the market, and maybe failures now with COVID, are a good reflection moment. That people are somehow kind of shaking up a little bit, like maybe the tricks of the past might not help us anymore, because so many things have changed. I think that's a very good starting point.
Yeah.
I think when people are on the top of their mountains, whatever you scream, they'll still be on the top of their mountain and thinking that they're close to God type of thing, But sometimes these existential moments that things are not going so well, and are great opportunities. And if people have then the wisdom to look for support and have the humility to say, maybe I don't have all the answers, I might go in my organization to ask the answers, or I'm going to kind of check this curiosity thing, and how do I get it into my organization? Am I recruiting for curiosity? Am I enabling curiosity? Am I really asking the right questions? Is it possible for any person to write emails to the CEO? If I'm doing this scan of my culture, then often people have the answer. Do I celebrate failures? Or failures that maybe at one time were successes? So I think how to go about this, I think there's so many.
It's very challenging.
I'm also an executive coach, and if people come, and if people realize they need an executive coach, that's already 50%.
You're
50% of the solution.
Realize that. Yeah, I think that a lot of people ask me the question that, okay, say we all want to embrace curiosity in our culture, but our leader doesn't, it's a stagnant atmosphere. There's a point where you, as an employee, just go, there's not too much you can do from this level to try and change things at the top. And sometimes it's time to cut bait and switch companies if you're trying to grow.
Yes.
And I think it's very challenging for people. But I think that a lot of people can think back to a time when they were more curious. When you go through some of the training how they've lost it. And I don't think you recognize it. It's just kind of drip, drip, drip. The water's dripped away at us, and this wearing down of our curiosity through the years, that it's not an overnight thing where you just all of a sudden don't ask questions. And a lot of leaders probably don't even recognize that it's not their the way they're treating their employees, but maybe the last leader or somebody else that this person has been in, experienced a conflict or something with, So I really think I'm seeing a lot more younger generations really embrace the need for this. And I think that that's opening up the eyes to a lot of the older leaders who really hadn't thought of this. So it's kind of every generation kind of impacts the other. Are you seeing any generation embracing this more than others?
Well, there was an interesting survey done by Merck, I think 2015, 2016. And they actually found that the Generation Z, so the Generation Z population, was less curious than the older generations.
And less than millennials, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that would be another generation, but I was thinking when you say older, like boomers or something only. But,
yes.
Why? They didn't really explain that. It was an interesting report. What do you think is the reason for that?
I think it's when people are coming into the organization, they're still not fully familiar with the environment. They don't know the opportunities out there, the processes. They're not too familiar yet with the environment, and that fear, as you rightly explained in your book, is one great, or anxiety is one great way to go. That goes against curiosity. And that could be one of the reasons that do this. But I think it's an interesting point you made earlier about kids and schools. And sometimes you get a feeling that schools are trying to drive out the curiosity of our children as much as they can, and that's one of their KPIs. I see also a lot of schools who are trying to go against that. I think but not entirely. And you see, for instance, Montessori schooling and Furness schools and some of the other alternative schooling that are really trying hard to go against that way. And then whatever you've left with after school is then whatever curiosity level you're having. And then somehow I'm seeing also that routine or stress or other of these kind of quote unquote negative dynamics generate an even more loss in curiosity. What I was looking at recently is often you have CEOs looking at strategies for the next 5 years, what we're going to do, and we're going to kind of climb that mountain, and this is how we're going to do it, one step at a time. And then they're looking back to the organization, and actually we did a survey at Cognizant in Europe with people, with companies outside of Cognizant, and we found that about 65% of those people, they said that they're happy with status quo. So they're not really interested in learning and growing and acquiring all these new skills that the CEO was talking about. And somehow you can ask yourself the question, why is this disconnect?
painted the picture in their mind of what they get from learning. And you know what I mean? Having been in sales, I worked for AstraZeneca for 20 years, you know, and I think
Okay.
of all of the things they teach you, and all the things. Sometimes companies give you so much hard skill knowledge, but then sometimes you're so focused on procedures and what you've learned that you're almost taught out of your question asking. And I sometimes share a story of when I was a pharmaceutical rep, where they trained us it was intense training. It was really good training. But I was told you need to say this, and you need to talk about this product, you know, and I actually was in a doctor's office, and I was the first, you know, time I'd been really alone at doing this, right? It was early 20s. And I'm talking to the guy. I'm so excited. I got all 3 products in. I walk out of there just like so proud of myself, patting myself on the back, walking to the elevator to go down to get my samples, right? Because I'm thinking, how I got 3 products in. I mean, they kept telling me you'll never get it because they'll be so busy. They're not going to want to talk to you. And so I go into the elevator. It's just as the elevator is closing, this guy gets on with me. And since I'm an extrovert, you know, I can't go 2 floors without speaking. So I look at him and I go, so did you work in the building? And he looked at me just mortified because he was the doctor I just sold my products to. I didn't even look at him. I didn't ask him any questions. I did what I was taught to do. You know what I mean? And we're taught these things, which they're good things. You need this foundational skills. But it was interesting. After I came out of training, my manager goes, yeah, forget all that. You know, I just went through a year of this, you know. So there's this sense that we're trained, but then we don't really understand some of the big picture of what we can get from this. And I think to build this curiosity, we have to see what's in it for us. And I think a lot of times it sounds really good that we want to develop a culture of curiosity, but what we may be thinking as employees is, oh, they're going to make me learn the next software again.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, there goes those assumptions. And then that leads to fear. And then that's the problem with technology and all the things that I studied for my research. So, you know what I thought was really interesting in doing the research was I thought they were going to mostly be fear-based. And I'd hired all these people from Harvard and Pepperdine and all these great schools, and they kept coming back with the same assessment. It would just tell you, are you curious or not? I'm like, no, that's already been done. I don't want that because it's out there, right? It's great, but nobody's done it. I said, I want to know what's stopping them. And so I ended up having to do my own factor analysis and do all this, right? Mm-hmm. And what I found out was it was pretty evenly distributed between fear, assumptions, the voice in your head, you know, technology and environment. It wasn't heavily weighted towards fear, which I expected. People have all these things and they kind of overlap to some extent. I mean, you could have fear of technology or whatever, but what do you see as the biggest thing that's holding people back? Is it mostly fear or is it something else?
I said it earlier, I think I would give it almost a 50-50 between external environments and internal environments. And internal environments, fear would be one, but limiting beliefs would be one.
Right.
Biases and other things that just stop you from looking beyond the filters that you're having on the glasses through which you're watching the world. That would be the internal dimension. And the external dimension, the environment you're referring to, I think is also huge. Because if there's research done with
that, because that's broken in the way emotional intelligence is, in a way. You know, emotional intelligence, you have your self-assessment, your self-awareness, and how you react to others as well. So it kind of is that same kind of thing. And the fear and assumptions would be the self, and then the technology and the environment would be the other. And it really plays into exactly what I found. So which are you having more difficulty having people overcome? The internal or the external?
Well, the external is always more difficult to overcome because that's external to your environment. It's HR processes, innovation processes, the way your CEO is thinking about the world, and your managers. Now, internally is also not easy. I'm often sharing with people that curiosity about self is one of the most difficult things to deal with. And of course, rational people, everybody will say, oh, I know about myself, I'm self-aware. But actually research shows that only about 10 to 15% of the people really are good at this. And just saying that you're self-aware doesn't make it so. There's the blind spots and all these I'm engaged every day in meditation, and I do a lot of meditation. I'm trying to go deep, but even then, it's so hard to get rid of your filters. It's so hard to get rid of your 50, in my case, 52 years of dust, that settles.
The clutter, the voice.
Yes.
It's interesting because I had Daniel Goleman on the show, and I was really interested in talking to him, of course, since, as I said, my dissertation was emotional intelligence, and he was very inspiring to me. And his focus now is really on mindfulness and the meditative, getting into that sense of, focus, like you're saying. And I was talking to him about that. And to me, I could never get a full sense of peaceful, quiet, like focus just on the breath, and he goes, no, you'll never get it completely gone. I'm like, oh, good. Because, for me, I have 50 radio stations going on at one time in my house. I don't know about you, but I think it's an important thing to do. And I think a lot of people are really focusing. I've had the mother of mindfulness from Harvard on my show, Ellen Langer. She was great. And I think that there's a lot that we need to focus on, just that sense of awareness of what we're thinking, of what we're not thinking, of where we can expand. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think that the big things you're going to see, a lot of adaptability stuff is going to come up. I work with a group out of London that does this adaptability AQAI group, and I think that that's big. And this year I'll be launching my perception index, which is kind of interesting because as we're talking about that, perception to me, you mentioned things that are perception based all the way through. And it's kind of a combination of EQ, IQ, CQ for cultural quotient, and CQ for curiosity quotient. How we go through this process of making these decisions, and we don't even recognize how we're over here and talk about external of how hard it is for us to see what other people are thinking. That I think we have to really work on curiosity to develop our perception to be able to work in a global climate.
Absolutely.
Does that come up at all in your training? I mean, I'm curious on that.
Absolutely. I'm so much with you that the solutions that we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago are not helping us anymore now. So the entire notion of problem solving, and everybody that we teach problem solving has to move towards problem finding. And you need curiosity, you need creativity, you need openness to know about a problem even before it arises. And that can be done in any different environment. That can be done in sales, it can be done in technology. But the entire notion of self-awareness and curiosity are part of that. And I don't think curiosity will go away and is kind of the fad of the moment. If we don't do this right, then AI will take away a lot of opportunities. Then we don't rise to our natural capabilities. Then if you're looking at some of the racist issues that we had in North America and in other parts of the world, if you're not curious about the other, society will not improve.
Huge thing.
Because curiosity is all putting yourself in the shoes of another. And being empathic.
Empathy is a big part of it. And it was interesting when I wrote the book on it. I started to put chapters in based on what they hired me to speak about. So I put emotional intelligence in and engagement and all these things that we're talking about. And if you look at what you're talking about, it ties in so much to engagement. We know in the U.S. we're losing 500 billion a year, according to Gallup. And you've got all these people who are disengaged and they're not loving life, basically going to their jobs as walking dead. And if we could get all those people that maybe technology, as you said, are going to replace some of these jobs. And if we start working with people now to let them explore and look into different areas and create new positions. And I mean, I've interviewed people like Olin Odekoven, who hires people and then designs jobs based on how cool what they can do, when he figures out what they're able to do this later. And of course, a lot of companies can't afford to do that, but that's a cool idea. You find out what are you really good at? What can you offer? And I think if we're not letting people explore, they're not going to even know what they're good at. You don't know what you don't know is the problem. So when you're doing this with people, when you're at the Curiosity Institute and you're working with these leaders, what kind of things are they doing to help people? I mean, what are you talking about with them day in and day out to help them?
Well, we're just starting with the Curiosity Institute. We were launched about 3 weeks ago, so
Oh, that's
don't
brand new.
expect.
Uh-huh.
But so I don't have the experience of working in workshops with managers yet outside of Cognizant and my previous organization.
Uh-huh.
But the feedback I'm getting and the calls I'm getting now from managers and from leaders and CEOs and learning leaders and HR leaders is tremendous. Boy, this is something we needed. We realized it. We have this humility now because we need that something is missing because of COVID, because of the changes, and we see there's a missing ingredient. It's the oven that the oven is not on in your language. And what do you have? And what can you help us with? And I think that's beautiful. I think we're onto something.
Yeah, I really think that you have hit on such an important topic, and I think you're going to hear a lot more. It's so funny, when I started first posting all this about curiosity, I set up a Google alert for when people posted things about curiosity,
Okay.
you know, and then I put minus Mars because everything was coming in as Mars, you know. but then nothing, you know, I didn't get that much at the beginning when all of my research first came out. But now every day you're hearing people talking about this. This is becoming a huge term that, and I think COVID has really, like you said, made us aware that we lacked foresight, we weren't proactive, and having all these ideas, and some of that stems from not asking questions, from not saying what if, why are we doing things this way? Why aren't we doing things this way? What could we be doing differently? And there's so many great companies that have improved, you know, Disney improved their turnover by asking their employees in their laundry, how can we make your job better? I mean, little questions like that have made huge differences. And I know Doug Comment's been on my show, and he's in every business class I've taught, more than 1,000 business classes, and he's like in almost every one of them for how he turned Campbell's Soup around as, you know, the CEO asking people, you know, what can we do to make your job better? Or what, you know, what makes you passionate about your job? And he wrote 30,000 handwritten notes in his time. And, you know, he gets that look like, yeah, it was a lot, you know. You maybe don't have to write 30,000 notes, but the fact that, you know, as leaders, we got to get out there and show that we want this. I think a lot of leaders are afraid to be humble and say they don't know what that they don't know everything. For one thing, there's that fear of looking like you should know more. And I think that we got to look to be a little bit more humble sometimes and go, hey, I don't know. And if I'm in a meeting and I'm a leader and I'm trying to instill curiosity in the rest of the group, I'm going to say, I wouldn't normally ask this question because it would make me look really dumb, but I don't care. I'm going to ask it because I want to have a culture of curiosity. Maybe one of you guys have the answer. And do you think that leaders are doing enough of that, or are they're afraid to look dumb?
I think that will depend on the culture. Different country cultures will be different, but there's definitely some of that. Most of the managers that are in their positions because of past experiences, not because how good they are on the day itself. And my identity is made of my past, so I'm supposed to say the right things because of the salary I'm making and all the rest of it. So that is different. But at the same time, the other side of the coin is, if you're looking at the innovation research, there's a direct correlation between asking the right questions and new ideas. Of course, new ideas are not just fluffy ideas. You have to go through an entire innovation cycle before these ideas turn into products. But the more ideas you have, the more products you will have, and the more questions you let your people. And just assuming that it's only the small group of managers who are allowed to ask the questions is counterproductive.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, I love that you are focusing on curiosity, and I was really excited that you took my assessment and we got a chance to talk about this, because I think there's so much to be done throughout the world. I know I had just launched a course through FutureLearn, which is out there in the UK, and it's the amount of people that signed up to learn about curiosity and the conversations from all around the world. The people, it's just so fascinating
That's
to
lovely.
see the impact that this message is having on the world. So I love that you've opened this institute, and I'm so excited for you. And thank you so much for doing this. I would like to know, though, people who want to follow you, find out more about your institute, and just learn more from you in general. Is there a place to follow you or social media?
I think LinkedIn and Twitter would be the immediate go-to places. The website is almost done for the institute, so watch that space. But LinkedIn is definitely going to be the tool to get information and to start a dialogue from. I think it's beautiful.
Well, that's
Thank you
awesome.
so much for having me, Diane.
Oh, it's just so much fun, and this was definitely my pleasure. And we will be back right after this message.